So we need to start somewhere. These are big, massive topics, each of which often have their own quarter, semester, year, or in some cases degree about it. But one thing that's not remotely intuitive until you've done a lot of it is how to even begin reading scientific literature. You do not read this like a book or even a textbook. And honestly, how you read the literature is going to depend a lot on your own background and what you're trying to get out of it. A grad student in the field is going to read a paper very differently than a layperson, and that's totally okay. But we want to help you decide what's best for you and your situation, and how best not to get overwhelmed. And very importantly, what limitations are imposed when you read them in specific ways. Let's start by talking about different types of scientific literature. Though this isn't all-inclusive, we can roughly divide them into a research article and a review article. A research article is focused on one specific experiment or set of experiments. These are new experiments in the field and can be thought of as a report on those experiments. In contrast, a review article is discussing previously completed and published material. It can simply summarize and describe the current knowledge in a field or subfield. And similarly, it can be looking at the existing knowledge of the field to answer a specific question. Both of these are largely just summarizing and putting into context many other articles. A meta-analysis is a bit different. Here, though using previously published data, there is some new analyses done where the researchers are combining many sets of data to come to conclusions. This can be used to determine the likelihood of a particular set of hypotheses as being true based on all the literature rather than just one new experiment. Now that we've talked about these two different types of articles, take a moment and think about why you or others may want to read one type of article over another. Spend 2 to 3 minutes on this, and as always, bonus points for sketching down some ideas on paper, and then continue on with the lecture. Go ahead and pause here while you do that. There are some huge pros to review articles, and it's often the place where you'll start when reading about a new topic. In many ways, a review article is the experts in the field doing all of the work of gathering research articles and analyzing them for their most important points for you. In narrative and systematic reviews, if you get an extremely high-quality review, it should unbiasedly analyze a huge collection of data for you. This can save you hours, days, even weeks of time. However, allowing someone to do that for you means that you are also not able to see the individual methods. You won't be able to check for flaws in the cited studies without separately going to them, which many will never wind up doing. Since there are no methods, if you're trying to replicate or tweak a study for your own purpose, you won't be able to do that, again, without going back to the original study. And then lastly, it is a human researcher doing the collection, which means that they can bias the results by how they include studies. A good review will describe how they determine inclusion criteria, but it's impossible to do away with bias completely. That being said, of course, if you want to look up all the studies on your own, that will be a subject to your own bias as well. Really, all the cons amount to, much of the data is hidden. Without looking further into it, you can't be confident in the author's ability to unbiasedly analyze the literature. Let's talk about the first part of the lecture assignment for today. Here, I give you a review article on the gut microbiome, a topic that is coming up more and more in both scientific and pseudoscientific circles. There's lots of emerging research, both high and low quality. I think that this one is pretty good and thought it would be an interesting topic to read about. Here, I'm going to ask you to pick 2 sections to talk about as a group. Discuss what the purpose of the section is and if you understood the main ideas. If you didn't, that's totally okay. Then talk about what you would need to understand. Maybe this is a certain degree, a certain class, or perhaps just an internet search. If it is just a few hours of internet research and YouTubing, that's okay to say that's what would be needed, but then not do it. The point of this exercise isn't so much to understand the article perfectly, as to start discussing the ideas about how we should read research articles. The second part of the group lecture assignment is to skim a research article and talk about the following questions. While here I'm giving you a specific example about the gut microbiome, try to consider the sections more generally. For each section, what would a person be trying to get from it? Who would likely read it? Who would want to skip that section? When and why would it make sense to skip that section? But if you did skip that section, what might you be missing that you would need to keep in mind? Pick at minimum 3 sections to do this with your group. If you have time and the willingness to do all 5, I think it will definitely help with your comfortability going forward in reading these topics. So you're definitely welcome to do more, and I do think it would be useful, but I'm just going to require 3. For the last part of the group assignment, I want you to reflect back on the research article you read and the people who would read the different sections, and think about for you, when would you want to read specific sections? For this class, which sections are most likely to be the useful ones for you? For your other classes? For interests outside of your classes? Because this part is a bit more person and background dependent, I want you to discuss it with your groups, but you may have a different answer from them. It's up to you if you want to report these differences all in the same document or answer them on your own document, whichever you find easiest and most comfortable. At this point, go ahead and stop. I don't want you to continue on with the videos until you've worked on the group work together. It's not so much that I will, quote, give away answers, as that doing so and watching more will really just take away from the discussion. There isn't really a right or a wrong. These are just things I want to make sure that you understand going forward, that if we were in class, we'd discuss as you were presenting your discussions. We can also discuss these in synchronous class time if you'd like, but I want to record it for anyone who doesn't come to class that day. So please don't sabotage your own quality of group discussions by continuing on with the videos before talking with your groups.